Dial O for Hero, Chapter 1. The first question. Oran Z. Belgrave's earliest memory was a patchwork of sunshine and laughter. He was only 6 months old, lying in a playpen beneath the warm Nebraska sky, as the summer of 1952 buzzed gently around him. The air in his great-grandmother Ora Douglas's backyard smelled of cut grass and sweet hibiscus. Sunlight draped through the leaves of an old oak tree, casting dappled patterns over baby Oran's curious hazel eyes. He gurgled in delight as a little girl named Sandra, a toddler neighbor, who lived in the back tenant house, which was a 2-story building with 3 apartments on each floor. It was colored pink, and Grandma's house was colored yellow. Sandra, with bright braids, peeked through the playpen bars. Sandra giggled and gently poked at Oran's chubby cheek, teasing him with a silly face. In that moment, even as an infant, Oran felt the world reaching out to him in playfulness and love. He couldn't speak, but he grasped Sandra's tiny finger in his hand and laughed. Above them, Great-Grandma Ora's soft humming floated on the breeze, a hymn to Jehovah God she often sang while hanging laundry. The baby didn't understand the words, but the melody of faith and the girl's laughter imprinted on his soul. This was the dawn of Oran's awareness, a world of light, love, heritage, and wonder. 5 years later, a biting winter wind rattled the loose window panes of the hilltop projects. 2414. N31 Saint in Omaha. It was December 1956, and 5-year-old Oran pressed his face against the frosty glass, watching dusk creep in on Christmas Eve. Inside, the living room was sparse and humble. There was no Christmas tree, no twinkling lights or piles of presents, just the faint aroma of cornbread baking and the steady tick of a clock. Oran's family had faced hard times that year. Money was tight. Santa Claus, he'd been told, was running a bit late. Oran hugged his knees to his chest as he sat by the window. He could see the neighbor's house across the yard, trimmed with cheerful lights. Shadows of the neighbors, dancing and celebrating, played out on their curtains like a joyful puppet show. Santa comes tomorrow for them, he thought, his young heart heavy with confusion. Earlier that evening, Mama had taken Oran onto her lap and carefully explained that Santa Claus would come on January honest instead of Christmas Day for their family. Santa has a special schedule for us this year, she said softly, not quite meeting his eyes. She tried to sound cheerful, but Oran sensed the sadness behind her words. At 5, he was perceptive beyond his years. He had seen Mama's weary smile as she counted crumpled dollar bills at the kitchen table. He knew something was wrong, even if he couldn't name it. Why January honest? Oran had asked, wide-eyed. In his mind, Santa was magical but also reliable every Dec 25, without fail. That's what all the kids at school said. Mama gently smoothed his hair. Her eyes glistened with tears she tried to hide. Well, baby, sometimes Santa has to help other families first, she answered. But he will come for you. He just needs a little more time. Oran heard the tremble in her voice. He wasn't sure if Santa was really delayed, or if this was Mama's way of saying there might not be any presents this Christmas. That night, Oran crawled into bed under a worn quilt. His breath was warm in the cold room as he whispered into the darkness, Jesus, are you listening? At 5, he'd often heard his grandmother pray to Jesus and Jehovah for strength. He wasn't entirely sure how prayer worked, but it felt as comforting as Great-Grandma Ora's hymns. I don't need lots of toys. I just want to know what's true, he murmured. Mama said Santa will come later. Is that true? Are you true? He waited, eyes squeezed shut. The only reply was the distant sound of a train whistle and the creaking of the house in the wind. Still, as Oran drifted to sleep, he felt a strange peace, as if someone warm and loving had wrapped an arm around his small shoulders. In his dreams, images fluttered. He saw himself as a baby in the sun, Grandma Oa's face above him, and a figure of light he imagined to be Jesus, gently smiling. New Year's Day arrived, on a cloudless, frigid morning. Oran dashed to the small stocking hung by the window he had insisted on hanging it, even if it was almost empty. To his surprise, there was something inside. A single toy car, painted bright blue, and a handwritten note. He recognized his mother's neat cursive. He couldn't read all the words yet, but he knew it said, Love, Santa, at the end. His heart swelled with gratitude and heartache all at once. He loved the toy, but he knew in that instant who Santa really was. The realization settled gently. Mama was Santa. Maybe Great-Grandma and Daddy and others all pitched in. There was no jolly man in a red suit coming down their non-existent chimney. The magic was a story his family kept alive, even when they had so little, to make him happy. Oran was young, but he understood the tender lie for what it was like, an act of love. He held the little blue car in one hand and the note in the other. Part of him felt like crying. Santa Claus wasn't real. That magical certainty of childhood wavered. But as that belief crumbled, something else took root. He remembered his whisper in the dark. Jesus, are you true? If Santa was a well-meant make-believe, what about Jesus Christ? The question hit Oran with the weight of a 5-year-old's world. Was Jesus just another story too? Across the room, Grandma Ora sat in her rocking chair, watching him quietly. She wore a thick shawl, and her wise, weathered face carried the strength of their African and Native American ancestry. Little Z, she called him gently, using the nickname Z that the family sometimes affectionately added to Oran's name. My other favorite grandma was Sadie Hazel. Nickname for me was Udi Kazudi. I hated it, but all my cousins loved to call Ma that because they knew I hated it. Come here, child. Oran walked over, clutching his new toy. Great-Grandma Ora pulled him into a warm embrace, the rocker squeaking softly beneath them. He looked up at her, eyes earnest and searching. Grandma, he asked in a small voice. Mama wrote this, didn't she? Santa didn't really come. Ora Douglas' face was full of empathy. She had never encouraged the Santa tale, being a devout Christian woman, but she also understood a child's innocent hopes. Your mama loves you so much, she said, tapping the note. She wanted to make sure you had something to smile about. Oran nodded, appreciating the gift and love behind it, but his mind was fixed on the bigger question. Grandma, what about Jesus? People talk about Santa and Jesus. I can't see either of them. Is Jesus real? His voice wavered, as if he feared the answer. Grandma Ora's eyes lit with gentle conviction. Oh yes, Jesus is real, she whispered, hugging him closer. Santa is a fun story, my dear, a tale of giving, but Jesus Christ is the truth. She reached for the old family Bible on the side table, its leather cover cracked from decades of use. Flipping to a page, she pointed to an illustration of baby Jesus in the manger. See this? Jesus was a real baby, who grew up to teach us about Jehovah's love. He is as real as you and me. Jesus is the one we must pray through, to pray to his Father, Jehovah. He gives us hope when things are hard. Oran traced the image with his finger thoughtfully. He thought of his whisper in the dark. Maybe that peace I felt was Jesus hearing me. In that moment, sitting on Grandma's lap, Oran felt something warm ignite inside his chest, like a small flame of faith. He realized that while Santa might not be real, love is real. His mother's love, which provided the New Year's gift, was real. His grandmother's faith, which filled the house with hymns even when food was sparse, was real. And if love was real, perhaps the source of love, God and Christ, were real too. That afternoon, while Mama and Grandma were occupied in the kitchen, Oran did something that surprised them. He gathered a few scraps of colored paper from an old magazine and a stubby pencil. With tongue peeking from the corner of his mouth in concentration, he drew a picture as best he could. A glowing star above a stable, the baby Jesus in a manger, and a few stick-figure shepherds kneeling. Beside them he drew a family, a little boy holding a toy car, a mother, and a grandmother, all kneeling too. It wasn't perfect art, just the earnest scrawls of a 5-year-old, but it came from his heart. When he presented this handmade gift to his mother, her eyes welled up. It's beautiful, Oran, she whispered, kneeling down to hug him tightly. He felt her tears warm against his cheek. They were not tears of sadness now, but of joy and pride. I wanted to give you something, Oran said, shyly pointing at baby Jesus in the drawing. Because Jesus is more important than Santa, and we already have love, right? His mother could barely speak, nodding and holding him close. In that embrace, Oran felt a deep sense of rightness. It was as if God smiled down on that humble living room where truth had gently won over make-believe. From that day on, Oran Z. Belgrave was a boy on a spiritual journey. The question of Santa versus Jesus became the first stepping stone toward his lifelong pursuit of truth. He began to accompany Grandma Ora to every church meeting or Bible study she would allow him to attend. Me and my mother met a lady named Sister Thelma Cannoli, who was with the Jehovah's Witnesses, called a full-time pioneer. She was also an herbalist, and she had a health food and vitamin store in North Omaha on 24th Street. Often, I went to the Kingdom Hall with other Jehovah's Witnesses, for Oran's family had roots in that faith, and they also visited a local church for Sunday school now and then. Oran didn't care where he learned, as long as he could hear more about God and history and the way to live right. He was ravenous for wisdom. By the time he was 6, he could recite the names of all the books of the Bible in order. By 7, he was reading Bible stories aloud, not just for himself, but for other kids in the neighborhood, even acting them out with a flair for drama and detail that drew laughs and applause. I also started to give Bible readings and talk over the stage at the local Kingdom Hall that was on 30th and Maple, right across the street from Howard Kennedy Grade School. The Kingdom Hall building itself looked like a drawing from the Watchtower magazine at a youth age. I thought that was the Watchtower Bible. And Tract Society, although it was just a building full of love. I tried to translate my own copy of the Bible that I would get in Greek and Hebrew and the Dead Sea Scrolls into an English that I could read and understand, far be it from the King James Version of the Bible. but in the modern day version of the word so I use, the Strong's Bible Diaglott along with others, and learnt many things like and John 1, when they talk about in the beginning there was the Word, and the Word was a God, and the Word was with God. It had two different spellings for the two different gods.